Chapter 4 The Intentionality Principle. Life is real. Life is earnest. And the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. A psalm of life. Life is exciting, it is living, sensing, feeling, doing, being purposeful, moving forward in time, trying. We are not pushed by the past, lashed by the present. We are pulled, willfully, by the future. We are intentional creatures, we are goal-bound. The intentionality principle is we behave to achieve. This does not necessarily mean that before acting we define our goal, list our alternative courses of action, and then select the one most likely to achieve that goal. Rarely in our lives do we choose so rationally. Usually, our behavior, thoughts, and emotions are entwined in a dynamic, being, perceiving, doing process. Nonetheless, when we get up in the morning and prepare breakfast, there is an implicit goal guiding our actions. We brew coffee, toast bread, pour juice, sit down at the table, and go through the diverse sections collected together in the term meeting. All this toward the goal of satisfying our hunger, or simply getting past a necessity of the day. Sometimes, of course, we do have to make our goals and means more explicit, as when we decide to go to college. Then we may first make clear what we want from college, a degree, a good job, a good time, before we make the actual choice of what college to attend, and what field in which to major. However, as long as we understand our goals as the often, but not necessarily, unarticulated ends toward which we direct behavior, then the following discussions should be consistent with our experience. As intentional individuals, we are fundamentally future-directed. We usually behave in order to achieve a goal, not because of something that has happened in the past. This may all seem obvious, but the distinction between in order to and because of has implications for political thought, for it divides two contending perspectives on behavior, that of the freedomist, and that of the socialist. One perspective is that our behavior is because of, the result of, causes acting on us and the conditions of our life, such as a bad family, poverty, capitalism, or lack of education. Or because of external stimuli to which we have become conditioned. Or because of psychological complexes and mechanisms. This belief that our behavior can be explained by a knowledge of our background, environment, or psychological complexes tends to dominate the social sciences. Those who subscribe to it are called behaviorists, or behavioralists in psychology. They assume that if they knew the relevant past and present conditions of our life and the causes operating, then they could predict most, if not all, our behavior. It is no accident that the practitioners of such behavioral disciplines as sociology and anthropology tend to be among the most attracted to socialism. An opposing view is that understanding and predicting our behavior requires knowing our goals. It is the belief that we behave in order to achieve a goal, sometimes regardless of the causes and conditions acting on us. This makes accounting for and predicting individual behavior far more difficult, since the goals of behavior are inside our heads, and not the easily defined, external causes and conditions that social scientists work with. One can easily test whether the in order to or because of approaches give a better understanding of behavior. Pick any person and ask how best one can explain their behavior. Is it by asking why they are doing something? If so, they may answer, getting ready to go to a movie, preparing to eat, working for a college degree, or going to work. Or do they instead explain their behavior by reference to a prior cause, like an upset stomach, depression, overwork, a hangover, their parents' influence, or hot weather? Usually, we will find that the explanation in terms of goals is the simplest and most effective. Sweetheart, a man may ask his wife, "What are you doing?" "Getting ready to go shopping," she may respond. This goal of shopping explains and ties together all her activities over the next 2 hours in ways an explanation in terms of causes could not. Knowing his wife after many years of marriage, the husband could predict fairly accurately her behavior, what she will do before she leaves, how she will go shopping and where, what she is likely to buy, about how long she will be gone, how she will return, and what she will do for around 15 minutes after she returns. In the same way, by knowing a person is seeking a PhD degree in political science from college, one can in a broad way explain and predict a good proportion of their behavior over the next several years, without knowing anything else about them. Of course, not all behavior is goal-directed. Indeed, reference to prior causes is sometimes the best way of understanding the actions of another. Some behavior is reflex action, as when we touch something hot, or unthinkingly react to someone's lack of consideration. Some behavior is aberrant or irrational, caused by deep psychological or personal problems. And sickness, fatigue, lack of sleep, moods, a sudden change in the sleep-food cycles, the jet lag of air travelers, and so on, influence the way we behave. Moreover, reference to causes can explain why some people pick certain goals over others, such as the influence of parents over their son's choice of a college major, of a wife's demands on her husband's attempt to stop smoking, or of a heart attack on a businessman's entering an aerobic exercise program. Nonetheless, generally the best initial explanation of individual behavior is their goals. The intentionality principle has four elements: needs, attitudes, goals, and means, interests, sentiments. The first element is that our intentions gratify certain fundamental human needs: sex, hunger, sleep, gregariousness, protectiveness, curiosity, security, and self-assertion. The first three and curiosity are self-explanatory. Gregariousness is the human need to associate with others, to be part of a family or group. The power of this need is felt through loneliness, an emotion that can be as strong as sexual desire or hunger for food. Protectiveness is the need to help others, which some call the maternal instinct, but which both sexes have. It is the altruistic urge, the need to do good, to improve society. It is driven by the emotions of pity, compassion, and sympathy. Security is the need for protection, safety, and assurance. This need shows itself through the power of fear. And finally, self-assertion is the need for status and identity, for achievement, for excellence. Its related emotion is pride and self-satisfaction. These are not needs I have pulled out of a hat, but those that have been identified in multivariate psychological research by Professor Raymond B. Cattell, and others. See the Handbook of Multivariate Psychology, which he edited, and his personality and motivation. These needs are the source of psychic energy driving our intentions. To understand this further, consider attitudes, the second element listed. An attitude is some latent, inactive, goal and means. It always takes the form of, in this situation I want to do X with, or by, Y. The want expresses the need, the X is the goal, and the Y the means. Thus, I want to go, means, to the movies, goal, tonight, situation, is an attitude, as is, I want to help the world's hungry by contributing to care, or I want to end the threat of nuclear weapons by preventing their proliferation, or I want to see my children through college, or, more starkly, I want to eat. An interest, the third element of the intentionality principle, is the same as an attitude in form and content, except that it is active, driven by our stimulated needs. To appreciate this, assume that our needs are simulated by an on-off light switch, and the unlighted light bulb is our attitudes, the lighted bulb are interests. When our need is turned on, it empowers our associated attitudes and turns them into interests, into energized goals. Thus, the attitude that we want to eat a hamburger and French fries may be latent, an unlighted bulb, so to say, until we pass a McDonald's and smell the hamburgers. The aroma may stimulate, turn on, our hunger need, which then transforms our latent attitude into a driving interest. This way of thinking of needs and interests passed into common English as a sexual metaphor in the 1960s with the phrase, "Hey, you turn me on." Our attitudes are the total collection of I wants that potentially satisfy our needs. Our interests are those particular attitudes stimulated by our needs, and which we now desire to achieve or gratify. The basic reason we seek to achieve goals, then, is that we believe they will gratify our needs. But those needs have to be stimulated first. And the appropriate attitudes have to exist in our mind before they can become interests, active goals. These, then, are the elements of human motivation, and their importance for individual freedom and for social conflict can hardly be overestimated. They have certainly been well recognized by the leaders of many political movements. To arouse the people to revolution, revolutionaries must first develop in them the proper attitudes connected to their needs. These attitudes must then be stimulated, by appeal to needs to transform into interests. Marxists have a slogan for this: raising class consciousness. Politically motivated teachers sometimes use a more respectable slogan, sensitizing the student. Now, such attitudes as "I want to eliminate hunger in the world," or "I want to help impoverished nations," or "I want world peace" are already stimulated for many people and accordingly shared by them. Therefore, those who want to foster freedom in the world should show how freedom results in far more than the satisfaction of the simple desire to be free, and, indeed, can make manifest the wishes which such popular attitudes express. To do this, educators might explain that no democratically free people have ever had a famine, that democratically free nations are also the wealthiest and most developed, that such nations do not make war on each other and have the least domestic violence. I shall return to these facts in due course. The fourth element of the intentionality principle is sentiments. These are clusters of attitudes sharing a similar goal. They are a goal complex. There is a religious sentiment, comprising attitudes on church attendance, reading the holy works, prayers, and expectations of the afterlife, birth control, and etc. There is also a sentiment concerning sports and games, involving attitudes on participating in or watching them, such as, "I want to watch football," and "I want to play poker." There is a career or job sentiment, comprising attitudes like "I want a higher salary," "I want more job status," "I want a better job." And there is also a material mechanical sentiment, clustering attitudes about material or mechanical things, such as "I want to own a ranch house," "I want a new Buick," or "I want the best golf clubs." Then there are the ideological sentiments that are basic to protecting and fostering freedom, such as "I want all people to be free," "I want freedom of religion and speech in our country," or its opposite, "I want a dictatorship of the workers," and "I want evil capitalism eliminated." The two most important sentiments are the superego and self-sentiment. The superego is our morality, a cluster of our moral ethical attitudes. It is the angel with a halo, standing in our mental field, pointing at ourselves with its finger, and commanding, "You should not do this. You should do that. It is your duty. That is wrong." Our self-sentiment, however, comprises our attitudes about ourselves. It is our ideal self-image, what we want to be. Perhaps we wish to exercise more self-control, be a better conversationalist, improve our reputation for honesty, upgrade our competence, increase our rationality, and so forth. Along with the superego, the self-sentiment functions fundamentally to orient our behavior, as I will describe in the next chapter. To review, then, the intentionality principle says that our behavior is future-oriented, that we direct behavior towards achieving or satisfying our interests. Moreover, these interests are attitudes that have been activated by our needs. We feel a need, which we try to gratify, goal, through some means. To turn this around, our interests satisfy our needs. Finally, attitudes, and thus interests, cluster into sentiments, of which the most important ones define our morality and self-ideal. For example, assume that while you are asleep at 2:30 a.m. there is the sound of a breaking window in another room. This would be a powerful stimulus forcing itself on your awareness and awakening you, as shown in Figure 4.1. Your first reflex would be to check the time. Note especially that perception does not directly stimulate needs. Rather, what we perceive, even something so dramatic as a breaking window at 2:30 a.m., must work through our mental field. It sets mental forces to work, and these may, but not necessarily, stimulate the need. There is no one-to-one relationship between a perception and a stimulated need, however. Much depends on our mental states, beliefs, meanings, norms, and location. There are some sources of misunderstanding here that I should clarify before moving on. Misunderstanding 1. Since everyone has the same needs, they have the same interests. Needs are common to us all, But how these are satisfied is a matter of culture, experience, heredity, and personality. One person may satisfy their need for food by eating dead birds boiled in water, chicken soup, while another may prefer goat, intestines, pig brains, or raw fish. Intercourse with the other sex may satisfy one's sexual need, if one is heterosexual, that is. An individual may gratify his protectiveness need by loving and caring for his child, while another might lavish such care on a dog, or the poor, or the hungry. The point is that although different people have common needs, and indeed, may share many interests, no two people have the same overall interests. And the greater their differences in culture, education, occupation, power and status, the more divergent their interests are likely to be. Misunderstanding 2. Interests are always selfish. This misunderstanding stems from equating self-interests with selfish. All our interests are self-interests in that they will satisfy our needs. No interest is selfish in this sense. However, the protectiveness need may dominate our interests and drive us toward helping others and even sacrificing our life for an ideal, such as freedom, peace, or equality. That people are prepared to give up their life for a human ideal, country, or loved one does not mean that they are acting without self-interests. Rather, they behave to satisfy a dominating altruistic interest, to gratify an overpowering need in line with their moral and self-sentiments. Misunderstanding 3. Goals are concrete, specific, conscious. Certainly some goals are clear and specific, such as seeking a book at the library, Christmas shopping, preparing supper, or voting in an election. Much behavior, however, is a flow of intermixed perceiving doing, without any explicit goals. Nonetheless, the behavior is intentional, the goals implicit. As I write this, I may become thirsty. A need to drink water is aroused, an interest in water activated. But I do not think, I am now thirsty. I want water. I can get some by walking to the refrigerator, opening the door, and pouring myself a glass of cold water from the container therein. No, I simply leave my computer and while thinking of what I am writing, I get the water. Much of our intentional behavior is such a routine response to our needs that we hardly think about it. But it is still goal-directed behavior. It is only when we must behave in a non-patterned, non-routine way that we will make our goal explicit, as in a decision over buying a house, changing schools or jobs, marriage, divorce, voting, and the like. Misunderstanding 4. Intentions and interests are knowable. This is the belief that we really can know another's intentions and interests. But our intentions and interests are locked up in our hidden mental field. They are personal, a result of the sum total of our unique experience and personality, an aspect of ourself. Others cannot really know our interests. Nor can we really know that of others. Thus, those who believe government planning should take precedence over individual decisions face this insurmountable roadblock, amongst others. Misunderstanding 5. Since we are driven by our needs and guided towards goals by our interests, we act because of them. No, we may ignore our needs, such as that for sex or for food. We may even suffer awful pain, although our needs and most interests scream at us to do what is necessary to escape it, as in being tortured, or trying to help our team win a gymnastics competition regardless of a serious muscle injury. We have free will, a will that can be so strong that it disregards our stimulated needs in order to achieve some goal. How else can we explain the soldier in combat, the secret agent who refuses to divulge information under torture, the monk in a monastery, and the suicide bomber? Taking all this into account, a fundamental problem we face, then, is how to communicate our interests so that others can understand and trust our behavior, and how to sufficiently understand the interests of others in order to work or live with them. In this problem lies a key to our personal freedom, and the relationship of such freedom to conflict and violence.